right, it is 8:02. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight on this VPSA call. My name is Bong Ko, and proudly serving as Vice President for Student Affairs, and excited to be your host tonight for another great chat. We have some new people here, which is fantastic. We have some alums joining us as well, which we're very excited to have you join us tonight. So for VPSA Chats, what that is, it's just our way of connecting and engaging with students throughout the year. We try to do at least once a month. Some will do more. And a lot of these topics, a lot of these conversations are based on topics that students suggest to us. Students will request like, hey, we want to talk about this or that. So I'll do is I'll essentially search and ask around to see what brothers can we bring in to help us share a little bit more of their insight, of their experience for these topics. The reason is, there's really no one solution, one net umbrella template for all of this, especially now during these confusing and uncertain times. So again, tonight, these are usually open to students, and tonight we're including alumni as well, so that they can be a part of the conversation. And tonight's topic is about how to stay involved and engaged after graduation. And usually we try to keep this to just the active, so that we give our students the space to ask questions, and just the space to kind of ponder the different solutions, and just really kind of discover for themselves how they want to go about this process. And tonight, of course, we have some alumni members. I see some people from our Alumni Association as well, and past leadership. So thank you all for taking the time to join us. Just some housekeeping items before we start. We'll try to keep this to about an hour. We may go over just a little bit with some last minute announcements. But overall, if you could just make sure you mute yourself so that the audio is clear for everybody else. And the way that the format will work is we'll have our panelists introduce themselves. We'll ask some introductory questions that you all have submitted, and we've picked a few of those out to focus on, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. So we do have a list of all the questions that you have submitted. So once we open that up, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask, or to type in the chat. And then if there's anything during our conversations that you want us to focus on, again, feel free to type in the chat as well, and I'll try to monitor that as we go throughout this session. Of course, we can't get through everything. The goal tonight is just to start some conversations, and to hopefully connect you with the individuals who are really, helping with our initiative, who are working behind the scenes. I do not claim to know a lot, or just with everything going on, we have great people who are helping us out. So I hope that you guys can connect with them as well. So without further delay, I would love to have our panelists introduce themselves. So we'll go ahead and kick off with Nick.
Hello, friends. Thank you for the introduction and the framing of the conversation, Bong. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Nick Rohr. I am the current chair of the KKPsi Alumni Association. It's really excited to see some previous chairs on this call, as well as some of my Alumni Association Board of Director members on the line as well. My background's pretty simple. I was initiated in the fraternity in 2007 at Virginia Tech. Did my undergrad there. After that, I went to the Colorado School of Mines, did my PhD there. After I was done doing my PhD, I became the chapter sponsor for the Colorado School of Mines. And now I still live in Colorado. Specifically, I am a staff researcher at the National Renewable Energy Lab. So I spend a lot of time thinking about plastics, how we can recycle them, how we can make them from biomass. I can talk about plastics a lot. I also teach yoga on the side, but big plastics guy, originally from NED, now a Midwest guy myself.
Awesome. Our next panelist.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am Kate Rorick. I am originally from Oregon. My chapter is MUPI at the University of Oregon. I currently now, though, live in New York City, and have lived here for the last 3.5 years-ish. So I am a relatively recent grad. I graduated about 4 years ago. So it's still kind of fresh for me too, which I think is a helpful way to look at it. I'm a couple years in. I have some knowledge that's pretty fresh. I currently work as a copywriter in advertising, and I work at a small advertising agency in Brooklyn. I am constantly talking to Nick about how different our jobs are, which is really fun that we get to work together, but we do completely different things in our normal lives. He sends me all these weird graphs that I have no idea what they mean, and I send him weird images that I Photoshop together. Uh, so I think that's one of the really great things about KKPsi in general is just knowing all these people who are in different fields as well. My current role in the fraternity is I'm on the Alumni Association Board of Directors as the vice chair. I also fulfill a lot of duties that are under the kind of communications director sort of role. And this is my second biennium on the board. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you so much. All right, so to our next panelist, could you give us an introduction as well?
Sure. Good evening, brothers. I am Rasai Elliott, originally from Houston, Texas. I currently reside in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., a part of the Northeast District. I attended Howard University. I'm a member of the Eta Omega chapter of KKPsi. In my personal life, I work for the federal government. I do risk management, internal controls, and I am currently the Northeast District Governor.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rasai. All right, to our final panelist, introduction, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Arupa Gopal, and I'm a life member from the KKPsi chapter at the University of South Florida in Tampa. I was initiated in spring 2004. In my personal life, I'm Executive Administrative Specialist to the Dean at the USF College of the Arts, so I work back at my alma mater, and I'm also sponsor for the KKPsi chapter, and I am one of the Southeast District Governors.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And again, just wanted to say to all of our panelists, I'm very, very grateful to have you on here tonight to share your insights. So the thing before we go into questions is that you're going to hear probably some different answers. You're going to hear some different perspectives because the way that we go about our experience as brothers, but especially at transitioning into alumni and how we give back, how we stay connected to the fraternity, that's going to be different. So I'm hoping that this will at least open up some perspective to you and show you what it could look like for yourself as you start to kind of rediscover, or I guess essentially just discover how you want your life to be and how involved you want to be. So with that being said, our first question for our panelists, if you could tell us more about what made you want to continue being involved as an alumni. Arupa, we'll start with you.
Sounds great. So for me personally, when I graduated, I moved to New York City to go to graduate school. And there isn't really a big fraternity presence in New York City. There certainly wasn't at the time. So I sort of wasn't very involved on the fraternity level right after graduating. I was very focused on graduate school and then getting out into the workforce. I actually entered the workforce in 2008, which is around the time of the financial collapse. So there was a lot going on. And I sort of took a break mentally from thinking about those kinds of things, but I also stayed on all of the message boards, on the email lists, stayed aware of social media and kept track of what the fraternity was doing, and was also in contact with my home chapter whenever I visited. So I stayed aware of what was going on. But mostly what ended up bringing me back to serve after graduation was, I think, what attracted me to being in KKPsi in the first place, which was wanting to help. I knew that there were new and interesting directions that the fraternity was trying to go, that they were always trying to reach new constituencies, new chapters and new universities. And I thought that the experience that I had on a chapter level was very relevant to future brothers. My chapter was very small when I was initiated and had had some troubles. And we worked through that and we were able to come out on the other side, and now they are much bigger and much better and doing very well. So I thought that my perspective that I had gained in sort of a tough situation would help me help other brothers, newer brothers, brothers in tough spots, brothers in small chapters trying to make it work. I just thought that I could help. And it sort of went in line with just that call to service. And so when I felt like I was a little bit more settled and I had the room and the space in my personal time to contribute effectively, was when I sort of started some conversations with various leadership about becoming more involved, and it just sort of built over time. So really what interested me was wanting to share what I thought was kind of a unique perspective and just helping the fraternity grow.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And I think you mentioned something that was really, really awesome is just like the fact that you had taken a break. I think sometimes there's that expectation that like, oh, if I need to AEA, right? If I need to strive for the IS, I need to continue that. As soon as I graduate, I need to, be a leader somehow and give back. And so I appreciate you mentioning that break there. And again, some people that may look differently, what that break looks like and how long. So we'll go next to same question for our next panelist, Rasai. What made you want to continue being involved?
Sure. So it's a great question. Mine is really a combination of both. Initially, right after graduating, I stayed local. I was working professionally here in the Washington, D.C. area, my first job out of college. And so I was able to stay connected to my university, my alma mater, Howard University. And so I continued to stay involved locally in the band program. It was really a continuation. I was immediately on band staff right after that. And so I picked up some responsibilities there while on staff with the band program. And I was able to continue to just build, learn, keep my connection to the local chapter by virtue of my position working at the university and working with the students at Howard University. And then from there, similar to Ruth, I took a little bit of a break because my professional career started to pick up, got more responsibilities there. So I needed to focus on that. So wasn't as involved on the district and national level at the time, but still maintained my connection to the local chapter. And another thing that really kind of still kept me connected were the brothers that I served with, both on the district level, the local level, and across the country. I stayed in contact with them. So we always had that connection to the fraternity through those brothers that I stayed in contact with over that time. And so as I got more established in my professional career, I was able to look at opportunities and ways that I could serve. And so that's how I ended up, the position opened up actually for the Northeast District Governor, applied, got that one. Outside of that, there were some other opportunities, but that was essentially my story is, I took a break for a little while as my career picked up, but then I continued to keep that connection to my local band. And so I definitely would encourage individuals to do that.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, and I'm seeing some common themes. Is that the fact that yes, you may have taken a step away, taken a break, but there's still that connection piece. Like you're still keeping your ear close to the ground, so you know what's happening, so that when you do come back, it's not this whole different world, right? It's not this whole different organization. You still have some pieces that you can connect to and really connect to the students or your band. So awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. So our next panelist, again, same question. Kate, what made you want to stay involved as an alum?
So I think when I just had graduated, thought I was going to want a longer break, and it turns out I guess I didn't really, in hindsight, because I jumped in pretty fast afterwards, even though at the time it did feel like I took a little bit of break. My senior year in school, I was Western District President, and I came out of the year being like so burnt out. I was like, I gotta have a break and not do anything KKPsi related at all for like a long time. And then 6 months later, I moved to New York City across the whole country. And one of the first things I did was look up brothers in the area. And there wasn't that many brothers here, but I still did meet a few people and hung out a couple times, and it was a good like introduction to the city. Just because we did have that common bond immediately. And then of course I also attended like national convention. I went back to Western District Convention. I wasn't super involved in either after I graduated that first year or two. But I just went because it felt like being home, in a place that was familiar, especially after moving across the whole country. and being kind of like up in the air about everything, like what's my job doing, what's my friend, don't have any friends out here, like, you know, all that stuff. And then I got definitely more involved when a role opened up on the Alumni Association Board of Directors. It was a communications director role, which is very in line with what I do professionally. And just having experienced what I did when I was in school, I just cared about the organization so much. I knew I wanted to continue doing that just because I want the organization to be better as the years go on for all the new students that come and go. And so that's the opportunity that came up for me. It's fit what I wanted to do, and that's how I'm involved now.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. No, thank you so much for that. And I love that you pointed out, you know, obviously job searching, that's going to be very real. And that's just for all alums. That's not just recent graduates. And, you know, if you have to move to a new city, you're in a totally new environment, it's great to know that you have some sort of connection there with brothers, with sisters. And I think the thing that really caught my attention was that you had said that originally in your mind, you had it planned in your head, like, I need a long break. Right? I just don't want to be involved. I'm burnt out. And I hear that very often. Even people who aren't seniors, it's like, you're a month and I'm burnt out, right? You hear a lot of that because we're servant leaders and we give our all the time, and people get burnt out. And I think that's normal. That's totally normal. I think the thing that you had mentioned is, it wasn't planned, like an opportunity opened up and it was one that really fits you. So I think the key takeaway there is that, you know, like, you can't really plan this. You kind of go and you stay connected, you ask questions. And when something really does connect with what your abilities and your passion point to give back, I think, you know, it's okay to be a little bit selfish and say, like, yes, I want to serve here. So awesome. Thank you for that. And to our last panelist here, same question. What made you want to continue being involved as an alum, Nick?
I mean, I think everyone has already kind of told the facets of my story already, because there's some similarities there for sure. I guess for me, like everyone else, is right after undergrad, I went straight into a PhD program for chemical engineering. And I told myself, like, unlike my undergrad degree, I have to be much more serious about this. Like, I didn't get into the top schools I wanted to get into, to be completely honest. I was like, I have to focus on this. And so I dug deep into my PhD pretty hard. And for me, that was like, okay, I'm going to take a break back from the fraternity. And moving to Colorado, I did my PhD at the Colorado School of Mines, as I mentioned earlier. And being from the Northeast, it is very expensive on a grad student stipend to try to make it halfway across the country. And that just wasn't really feasible for me to do and go back to all these NED conventions like I wanted to. So one day there was a cheap plane ticket to Kansas City, and I kind of knew some people who were going to the Midwest District Convention there. So I went to the Midwest District Convention and got random roommates and whatnot. And the Midwest District Alumni Association was like, Midwest District's really friendly people in general, if you haven't hung out with them yet. But they were the nicest people. They like brought me in. And I ended up being an officer for the Midwest District Alumni Association. And then I did that for, I think, 2 years. And then a position opened up, or there was an open call for the Alumni Association Board of Directors. So I talked to Melinda Matney actually about that. I was like, should I do this or not? She's like, absolutely, you should do it. And then once I was on the Alumni Association Board of Directors, the band director at Mines, where I was doing my PhD, I was like, oh, you're here. Do you want to start giving some advice to the local chapter here? I was like, I would love to be more involved with that. So for me, I don't think there was ever like a clear drive of, I want to be back involved with the fraternity. It was, I kind of just kept my ear to the ground. And then, like, I think all of our stories, once I started interacting with the people, it's just like falling in love with new jobs and new roles within the fraternity. And that's how I guess, slowly ended up being on the Alumni Association Board of Directors. And honestly, for me, I didn't, run for a national office right away or anything, but it was the Alumni Association involvement that kind of opened up more involvement with the kind of more national leadership side of the fraternity for me. So yeah, it was all happenstance, and it was just making friends and watching that evolve.
Yeah, no, and that's great. Like as you continue to go through your experience, I think something that we all love to do and want to do, we just have to figure out how to do it. As awkward band kids, is how to build those relationships and like all the panelists have mentioned, taking that break, staying close to the ground, but also, being proactive about reaching out and building those relationships and asking questions. I think that's something that if you do plan on or have some desire to stay involved in some shape or form, ask questions, because this looks totally different. And again, you're an alum much longer than you are an active. So, there's going to be a lot more questions you're going to have. So, so great. Thank you all so much for that. So our next question for our panelists, and we'll start with Kate here, is in your personal experience, if you had to talk about what is the one biggest change that you've noticed from being an active to after graduation?
So I've been thinking about this a little bit as we've been going, and I came up with two things actually. So I don't know if you'll let me.
Yes, okay, go ahead.
But so I think the one thing, at least within being an active to being like right after graduation, I think one of the biggest things that changes is like there's a level of uncertainty with your life that happens. In college, it's very much like, oh, I know what classes I need to take. They're telling me exactly what classes to take. I know chapter meetings are on Wednesdays or something. I know I'm gonna study this weekend and go out or whatever. You know kind of what you're gonna do next. And then after graduation, that kind of is removed a little bit, which does pose some challenges. Some people have a lot of things lined up right after graduation and some don't. And either way is perfectly fine. It's just like, there's job searching, there's where are you going to live, where are your friends at, how are you going to connect with them? And that kind of brings me to my second thing that I thought of that's like a big change after graduation. I think how you make connections changes completely after graduation. From when you're in college, it's like the people who are closest to you physically, who you're around all the time, who are in your classes, who's in your chapter. But I do think after graduation, you have the opportunity to connect digitally, and that's something that we're all experiencing right now on such a hyper intensified level, but that is a way that you can do things normally too. I find that a lot of my really close friends live absolutely nowhere near me, and sometimes that's really comforting to just know like, oh, someone might not be next door, but like I can call them up and video chat, and I know that they're there for me, even though they live in California or Washington, D.C. or, back in Oregon where I'm from, so I think that really changes, and how you keep up with people changes.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. And again, I keep going back. I know this is a stereotype, but awkward band kids, like we're gonna have to figure it out some way. And I think the fact that we could just bond over KKPsi is like, that's just a great conversation starter. And then from there, you really get to know people outside of KKPsi, and it's just more beautiful in that sense that you have something that deeper to connect us all. Okay, so same question for our next panelist, Arupa. What's the biggest, in your personal experience, what's the biggest change?
So I'm gonna agree with Kate on the lack of structure thing. I respond very well to structure, and the structure of school was great for me. And then when you graduate, you make your own structure, and I was like, I do what now? So I really needed to come up with a plan for myself and think about how I wanted my life to be. And it's a little at a time. You work at it, you figure it out. The biggest thing for changing from active to alumni, so from like a fraternity perspective, not just the life perspective, was just that I didn't think 1 second about what alumni involvement in the fraternity would be when I was active. Like I did not give it one single solitary thought. And it's mostly because I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that my chapter was young. We didn't have a lot of alumni to come around and show their perspective and show us how to be alumni. There were some that we were very grateful for. Bert, I see you. But we just didn't have a whole lot of model for how alumni life looks, and especially in regards to further service in the fraternity. So I just didn't really even know what I could do in terms of further involvement with KKPsi, and I just made the assumption that that's it. It's you're active and you do the work of the fraternity, and then some special people got to stay involved and help run things, but there was no connection between me and them. Like there was no way for me to bridge that gap. So the biggest change for me was adjusting that perspective. I thought it was over, and I thought I would never really be able to be involved again. I could go to conventions, but that's about it. So I think I really needed to take a second and think about it and really explore things to figure out how I could keep serving, because I could.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something that I hopefully we'll talk about a little bit later here, but there's this sort of this assumption that, like, let's say, for example, the individuals who serve on district council and then they graduate, they're connected and they're the only ones that can stay involved and that can, you know, serve in higher positions in the fraternity. And honestly, some of the people that are serving now on the fraternity never served on the district level, and some of them
I didn't.
yeah, like, and like great leaders who bring different perspectives, who, you know, ask great questions, and that's, I guess, something that I really want to drive home, is that you don't have to serve have experience serving on the district level in any like official capacity. I think it's the fact that, you know, if you want to serve, if you're asking questions, you're staying connected. I mean, that's all you need right there. So awesome, thank you for sharing that. So same question for our next panelist here, Nick. What was the biggest change?
Like Kate, I'm going to say two, but the one really quick, and that is when I was at Virginia Tech, just because of the way our band was, our interview process, all this stuff worked, I had a meal, like I never ate a meal alone, to be honest. And when I went into grad school, I ate a lot of meals alone. So that was the first change that I noticed across the board, is just like eating alone. And I know that's weird, might be weird to say, but it's what I noticed right off the bat. The second change, I kind of want to like go to one of the things I say a lot as chapter sponsor, or at least I think I say a lot. I don't think anyone from Zai is online, so they can't call me out today at least. But one of the things that I always say is, when you are an active member of this fraternity, your priorities in this order should be school, band, and then the fraternity. And I believe that. I will argue that nonstop. When you get into like the real world, that list might stay the same, but it also expands dramatically. So I went into a grad program, so school became my number one priority up here, and then I was still playing in bands, so that was like, you know, here, versus in college it was like this. And then the fraternity was here, and then, you know, for a lot of people, I was single at the time, so I didn't have to worry about a relationship or anything like that. But you start kind of getting other priorities that might rank, you know, more than the fraternity, when in college we are so intimately involved with organizations. And so I think that's kind of what it is for me, is the fraternity isn't your number one priority. And even for like our national leadership, who are, the fraternity is a pretty high priority, it's still not our number one priority. We still have careers we have to tackle and all this stuff on a daily basis, because it's still a volunteer organization. So I guess that's, the priorities change is kind of the big thing to me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And again, the eating alone thing is too real sometimes. So there's too much to unpack there. So we're just going to go ahead and go over to our next panelist. So Rasai, what is, in your opinion, the biggest change for you?
The biggest change I can say in one word: bills. Though you don't have a lot of luxury. So bills, the student loan bills, it's life, you know, after you know, undergrad, especially if you don't go right into grad. I did not go straight into grad school, so immediately I had to start looking at, all right, how am I going to pay these bills? Well, you know, thankfully I was able to have a job and, you know, go right into my career, but that allowed me the opportunity to start looking at what I had going on. And so I'd see a lot of people were nodding when I said bills, because a lot of people really kind of understand that that's something that you're going to be facing. Student loans, some of you may have those. So take advantage of the programs. I would definitely encourage you to take advantage of those programs that are out there. Don't run from it. Just set a plan, set a goal, make a plan, set a goal, and kind of see it through. For me, I was able to take advantage because I was in public service, the public service loan forgiveness program. So, you know, just as relates to student loans, and then you got to find a place to live, you find a way to pay for it, those things. So life got real, really fast because of those type of bills. And so don't let it scare you. Keep your head. All those lessons that you learn in the fraternity, apply them to life. You know, meeting adversity, meeting the challenges, finishing projects, setting goals, completing tasks. Use a lot of those same lessons that you learn in the fraternity and just apply them to life, and you'll be successful. So that was the biggest change for me.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yes, the bill, that's too much to unpack there with the bills as well. So we're just gonna phase over that. But just in general, like utilizing these skills, I think just in general, and yes, I'm biased, but just in general, as I'm observing through my professional life, and hearing just the way that people can think through solutions, and just kind of be more solution oriented, and just really focus on how to overcome adversity, like you said, has been so just really incredible in those that I've known that have been connected through KKPsi, through TBS, through marching band, because it's like a constant push for us to really develop and mature in that way. And I honestly just don't see that in a lot of other people in the professional world. So I think that's a really important piece there. So really trust in your experience, trust in the values and lessons that you've learned, because it will be there for you. And it's really going to help guide you through life in general. Bills, I don't know how to help you with that. So at this point, we've answered some general questions that were submitted. I do want to open up the floor to our attendees to ask their questions. And if you don't have, I have some that people have submitted. So go ahead and type in the chat if you have those questions, and I will moderate. So are there questions? Great. I'm going to ask the first question, because awkward silence is also terrible. Okay. What was the one I wanted to ask? Okay, so let's talk about alumni brothers attending like chapter functions, chapter meetings and such. There are a lot of questions about that because maybe people don't know where to look. Maybe there's a lack of clarity. So I'm going to lean on our alumni association leaders here. What can you share with us?
So, I knew this one was going to be teed up for me. So one of the things to kind of make clear is the Alumni Association, alongside with the National Council last biennium, actually drafted a policy about this. Now, it's kind of all the problems with the 1,000,001 policies. Where is that on the website? All that stuff. We are rebranding our alumni handbook. It's in our local Alumni Association handbook. And I'm going to tell it to you here now. So one of the things is alumni brothers can attend events at chapters if the chapter invites them. So in our viewpoint, it is unacceptable if, like Xi, for example, they meet every Friday at 4 o'clock in the Ford building. It's been that way since they were chartered. As an alumni, you cannot surprise people and be like, hello, friends, I'm here. Is it acceptable to reach out to your chapter president and be like, hey, I'm going to be in the area. I was wondering if I could stop by. Yes, you can do that. But the big thing I want to emphasize is you have to have an invitation from the chapter, and also chapters can revoke that invitation at any point. So it's just important to note that, this is their active experience. A lot of you on this call are coming to the end of your time as an active brother, but not your time as a brother is the important thing to note. And the experience does change, but just, you have to be invited, and that invite can be revoked. Not really too worried about it, but that's our official line.
Yeah, so what about life members? There's a question here about kind of going off of that, but life members.
Yes, life members are still alumni members of the fraternity. So yes, same rules apply to life members. Even though you can serve as a chapter delegate at National Convention, it does not get you any, thank you, Brent, any additional benefits from that of an alumni. We say that all alumni, regardless if you're if you're a dues paying member of the Alumni Association or you're not in the Alumni Association at all, you do have to still get permission to attend those things. We do say as a caveat that Brent Cannon lovely called out for me that if it's a public event, so let's say Xi, which they do, the chapter I'm a sponsor for, makes a Facebook post, invites everyone on the interwebs to their third degree. Well, one, hopefully only brothers are going to their third degree. But aside from that, hopefully that's a public event. It's publicly advertised, and you can go to that event. We would still love if you just reach out to even let chapters know that you're coming, because obviously logistics change day of. This is me more speaking as a sponsor than chair of the Alumni Association. You can still reach out and tell them, like, hey, I saw that this was advertised on Facebook. I'm coming. I'm so excited. But yes, if it's publicly advertised, you can go to it.
Yeah. Okay, anything to add? No. So yeah, I would just say, just be safe. And if you want more clarity in this, or if you have specific situations, please reach out to Nick and Kate, and they're more than happy to clarify that for you. I think just in general, putting myself back, in active days, if I was in a chapter, leading a chapter meeting or whatever, and alumni comes in, good or bad relation, I think just like having somebody that's not generally there, you kind of feel watched, or that it adds that extra pressure for students. And again, in each chapter, in each district, there's different cultures there, and of course we want to be respectful of that. But I think at the end of the day, it's more about the students and making sure that we're giving them the best experience possible. And sometimes that means just don't show up. Give them that space to kind of figure things out on their own. Okay, so there is a question here from Jessica. Thank you, Jessica. Always great with the questions here. Which committees or initiatives can graduates jump right into?
I think I can take that one, and then Nick, let me know too if I forget anything. But what comes to my mind first is you can get involved in local alumni associations. We have quite a few across the whole country. It's a really good way to get involved locally in your area, and a lot of those also have committees that you can be on, or be an officer of that local alumni association. That's one good way to get involved as an alumni. A lot of specifically a lot of district alumni associations have committees to be involved in too. And then also we have like the mentorship program. Specifically, you as young alumni, that's one really great way to take advantage of the mentorship program. And that's happening right now. It's perfect time. You can still sign up for that. Send me a message and I'll send you a link to it. I believe also it's up on our website. It should be. But definitely, if you want a mentorship program, message me this week and we'll get you in. And then also have alumni association committees that you can join. There are 3 committees currently: the musicianship committee, the awards committee, and the finance committee. And additionally, there are national committees. We do a lot of open calls for these committees. So if you follow both the fraternity on Facebook as well as the alumni association on Facebook, those are really good ways to get that information. Also, all graduating seniors are alumni association members, so you can have access to our alumni newsletter, which we send out every month with all the updates that you need. So be on the lookout for that too. Nick, did I forget anything?
I don't think so. I think one of the things, like, shout outs, I know Rasai served on one of these. We used the Alumni Association list this past convention season when stuff hit the fan. We got a ton of alumni volunteers to help with the Zoom conventions, and they've been doing a lot behind the scenes that, first off, we're super thankful for our alumni members who have done that. But I think it's really just staying in tune to the social media of the fraternity, being on email list, because there'll even be calls from the National Council as well. I think one of the things to note is in the past 3 bienniums, I could be wrong, the national president of the fraternity, incoming national president of the fraternity, has issued a volunteer form, and a lot of people are like, oh, that's just a district governor application. I'm going to say, don't know what Jess Lee is going to do. It's not just a district governor application. They go back to those things to find people for committees. I think it's how we got Derek Stodden as our curriculum advisor, our chair of the curriculum committee. So if you see any of those interest forms, fill them out, because you can always say no to an opportunity too. If someone's like, does this serve you? And you're like, I can't do it right now. And that is absolutely okay to do as a alumni.
Mm-hmm. And also keep in mind that some of those committees are short-term. So there are long-term standing committees that go on for years, but there are some that meet for a season for as long as needed, and then they're done. So you don't have to think of it as some kind of permanent long-term situation. You can look for opportunities that are a little bit more short-term.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. So, and again, if you want some more clarity on this and like other ways to to stay engaged, to stay involved after graduation, I think, as we heard earlier, the best way is to keep your ear to the ground, to ask questions and reach out. I will say, just with so much going on, like, being part of the planning process, my mind is, I'm thinking like months, years in advance. Sometimes there are going to be things that leaders miss. So if there's something that you see as a need, reach out, communicate with people before you put things into plan, so that, it can be something we can work together on. And it's not, maybe, we want to avoid double work. We don't want to avoid an initiative that might, be hurting TBS, or, we just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So make sure you reach out. And I think, just to share my personal philosophy of this, is I think that as individuals who have graduated, I think that we need to do ourselves and do some service for ourselves, and give ourselves that time, that break to breathe, to learn about ourselves a little bit more. Because ourselves in college, you're going to go through growth. You're going to actually put those lessons into practice and grow, and really see, all right, how do I use these values? And then from there, you learn professionally, you grow, and you take those skills that you're learning, and the things that you're learning from work and from life, and you bring it back to the organization. I think that's really how the organization is going to continue to grow. If you're staying involved and it's like you're just staying in that niche area, I don't know if you're doing the organization or yourself justice. And that's just something for you have to decide that. You have to ask those questions. And when is it a good time to take a break? Just because you take a break doesn't mean you're saying, peace out, Girl Scout, like I'm not coming back. So yeah, talk through this with your friends, with mentors, and just really with yourself, and ask, like, what does this look like for me, and how involved do I want to be? The next question here is, how do you balance being a supportive alumni who guides the chapter without being overbearing and saying, that's not how we did it when I wasn't active? So we'll go with maybe one or two responses.
I can jump in. I think I saw Will. Hey, Will. I think it's important I think we kind of mentioned growing and learning earlier on in the conversation. And I think that's important when you make that transition. You can be supportive, but you want to kind of transition to that advise and recommend, and, allow the chapter the space to reach out to you, because you may just be separating. It might just be just a few weeks difference, from when you were running the chapter or involved in the chapter. But give the chapter that space to take things to the next level, and just be there. Make sure that you let them know that you're there for them, and allow them the space to reach out to you if they have any questions. But you're not that far removed, so they know who you are, and just accept that, this is their time to grow now. And you can allow yourself that time to grow professionally now that you have moved on.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Anyone want to add anything to that question?
In general, you probably just shouldn't say, that's not how I did it when we were there. Just don't say that.
Right. Turn off.
It's not great. In general, I feel like letting them ask for opinions and for thoughts, letting them ask for advice instead of just offering it up, especially if they know what your experience is with the chapter. It's going to happen. It might not happen all the time. It might not happen every semester, but if you just are around and they know that you're around and that you're supportive, they will guide what kind of involvement they would like from the alumni, and you can let them do that, as opposed to saying, here's how I'm going to be involved.
Yeah, and maybe just as a brief add-on to that, I think one of the things that we undervalue when we talk about the fraternity, our motto is strive for the highest. It's this big, grand idea. The thing I love about the fraternity, being a chapter sponsor, is it's also a safe environment which you can fail. I have stories about how I failed as an active, but they're things I learned from. And I think that's so valuable, and it's such a valuable part of the fraternity that, hell, even if, pardon my language, even if you tried, to do that same exact service project 3 years ago and it failed terribly, well, let people fail. Failing is valuable, and sometimes it's one of the best things we can get from this fraternity.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's really good too. Just like, the fact that we're giving our students the space to learn, because if we're sitting there trying to spoon feed them all this stuff, like you're just not doing them and the chapter any justice. So, we need to let them, figure out these lessons, figure out how they adopt, the changes in the chapter. I think also at the end of the day, like if you just offer like, hey, I just want to say that I'm a supporter. I'm here if you need me. Here's my contact information. I think that's great. And if they don't reach out, and if you are offended, and again, been there, I get it. You need to ask yourself, like, am I offended because my ego's hurt, or am I offended for another reason? And again, that's a growing process and a learning process for you as well. Okay, great. So we'll go to our next question here. There's a lot of questions. Oh dear. So I know there are a lot of questions about local alumni association. I'm just gonna make a quick plug. If someone can correct me here, but this Saturday for the DC Alcoda weekend, which more information will be coming out, there is a session where we're gonna be talking a little bit more about local alumni association. Is that correct?
Yeah, so for the DC Alcoda weekend, I don't know when the schedule is going to come out. I think Bong does, but maybe not. But what's going to happen is there's going to still be a graduating senior lunch, and this will actually be an opportunity for our district-based local alumni associations to kind of introduce themselves to our graduating seniors, as well as me and Chris Foster, who's the chair of the Tau Beta Sigma Alumni Association. We'll be presenting short presentations, getting a little bit of the intro into the Alumni Association, our dues structure, all that stuff. That stuff will be available. So yes, it will only be it won't only be. Our district-based local alumni associations will be the ones kind of leading the discussion, and there'll be breakout sessions where you can interact with them. But we do have local alumni associations across the country. You can start a chapter-based one, you can start a regional one, all that stuff. I guess the one thing I would plug here is, one, we can talk more about it if there's specific questions that Bong wants to pull out, or there's burning questions you want to toss back in the chat. But Greg Boyke is our Alumni Association Director. The email is laa@kkpsi.org. If you've never met Greg Boyke, he's a wonderful human being, like pretty much all my directors. And so reach out to them, and he'll be able to answer questions and have emails nonstop back and forth with you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think maybe something that is, as we're kind of talking through this, is that we can work with Kate to do some highlights of these different organizations for you to look into. But I think at the end of the day, if you are interested, depending on, I think the most important thing is like you have to figure out, like, once you graduate, where are you gonna be? Because again, that could change very quickly, and you don't want to overcommit to one organization and be like, all right, peace out, because that does hurt the organization as well. So I think first figure out where you're going to be, reach out to know like where. I think now all of our districts do have a district LAA, so that's good to know. And then if there's not one, start one. I just, a couple years back, there was not one for the NCD, and now NCDAA is thriving. So I'll say connect with our alumni association, and just overall the alumni leaders, just figure out like what they enjoy and where you can get involved on that level. This next question is, where is it? What are some ways that the current chapter can help alumni feel like they're still important to the chapter? All right, so 1 or 2 responses on this, please.
I think I can answer this, at least from my experience. Making alumni feel included, feel important. I think that is on the opposite side of things. Alumni wait for actives to reach out to you, but actives, feel free to reach out to alumni. Most likely they really want to help you, and it will make them feel good to help you. Even if you don't end up taking their advice, which you have no obligation to do, it will be a good relationship builder. And I think beyond that, just inviting alumni to degrees and stuff. I always like hearing about the degrees as they're happening. Even if I can't go, it's nice to just see what's happening in the chapters, keeping up with everything. I also like that my chapter, they send out like periodically like a little newsletter, and I still read it, and I have no idea who any of the people are anymore, but it is a nice way to stay connected.
Great. Anyone want to add anything to that?
From like a sponsor perspective, sort of watching alumni relations sort of ebb and flow over time, I think the things that are really important to consider are that active members should realize that alumni are adults, and you can't really message them at 4 p.m. and say, first degree's at 7, see you there. Like, that doesn't really work. So sort of long-term announcements of things, keeping them informed. I don't think most alumni really want to be inundated with a bunch of stuff. So I don't think it really involves like a lot of heavy lifting, but consistency. And especially when officers change year to year, if every September all your alumni get the same email about, please send us your email address so that we can keep you, when you get that year after year after year, you're like, where is my email address going? Like, who's keeping track of this information? So just keeping it consistent, keeping it clear, and just showing them that you care about their time as adults, and keeping that line of communication open, but not like inundating them with a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really awesome. And, I just kind of go off of that really quickly is I think some chapters, maybe most chapters have some sort of position or chair that directly works with, communicates with alumni. I would say really leverage them and give them the space to be creative and how to bring alumni voice in without it becoming an overbearing issue. So, I've heard of some chapters having great success, especially during this time, bringing an alumni in for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, just kind of do like an alumni spotlight, like tell us about, a funny story, or like, what's the biggest takeaway you've gotten from KKPsi, that could be something as well. So again, if you don't have that position, reach out to chapters that do, and maybe kind of learn from them, and maybe you can figure out how to incorporate that alumni secretary or that liaison in your chapter. And then again, at the end of the day, direct them to the alumni association, be like, oh, hey, here are your people. So, there are different ways to go about it, but I think just having that conversation is most important. All right, so our next question here is, what can alumni do to help support their active chapter, especially in the case where a formal alumni association does not exist? Oh, you really stumped them with that one.
I'll go. I just wasn't sure if anyone else was going to go. There was also a question somewhere here in the chat. I think it might not have been that one. It says, what can alumni do besides just giving money to the chapter? So I'm going to try to answer both in one. So I think one of the things that alumni can do is just, it's reaching out, it's offering your services. Like, I know we have accountants in the fraternity. I am not one, but teaching people how to do some basic accounting might be worthwhile. So you can always email the chapter president, be like, hey, I'm this, and here's some services I can offer if y'all want it. Emailing the director of bands and things like that are also great ways. Just being like, hey, I'm still around. If you need help, let me know. I think the big thing here is obviously not to become overbearing. I don't know if Versailles wants to talk about how he got involved with Howard on band staff. Virginia Tech didn't have that, so I don't know how that works personally. But I think there's just kind of ways you can offer your services, and then to some extent it does become, well, someone has to take on those services. But at the same time, it's really not hard, going back to local alumni associations in the context of the fraternity, to start a local alumni association. For us, it's an application that looks like your 1 and 5 year plan, saying we would want to do this, we want to do this, we want to do that. So you can always be a leader and start kind of that start type of program. Or maybe if you're worried that there's not enough KKPsi members to start a local alumni association, you can start a band alumni association. I know Virginia Tech, for example, talking about my undergrad once again, has the Marching Virginians Alumni Association, which does a lot of their own events, and they really focus more on service to the alumni than they do to necessarily the active chapter, but they're still able to give back. And the thing I kind of want to highlight is, I don't know if anyone's been to Blacksburg, Virginia. I have. I love it. It's a beautiful place. I was actually born there, but it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And so you can still have a local alumni association that doesn't necessarily have to go to the university to do events. You can have drives to raise money for the actives, to send them to conventions. I think there's 1,000,001 ideas that you can do, and honestly, no idea is too small in the context of what you can do as an alumni association.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Nick, you're right on. And just to reiterate, kind of my experience, if one, absolutely, if there's no local alumni association, hey, take the initiative, start one. But you're right. Also, the band alumni association, if there isn't one, then hey, that's another opportunity there. And where there is one, see how you can get involved there. I can tell you from experience because I'm also involved and one of the co-coordinators for Howard's alumni band program, and there's plenty of work. It's always the case of the work is plenty but the laborers are few. So and you can apply that to anything. So there are other ways, and of course in working with the band director and staff there at the university, if there's an opportunity for you to serve there, just reach out to the band director, let them know that you're still there. That's kind of how my experience was. I started working with the band, and as well as the alumni association, the band alumni association, and that's how my service was able to continue. But the big key is to serve. And so whatever it is, even as an alumni, outside of just paying your money, if you're still willing to pick up coolers or pick up water, whatever it is, if you're as long as you're willing and able, to continue to look for ways to just serve.
Mhm. Yeah, I love those responses, because I think it really sets the precedent that like service is going to look different, like everything else. Like service is going to look different as an alum, and I think at the end of the day, like if you're an alum and you're looking a way to serve, I think just being an individual that from time to time reaches out, be like, hey, are you okay? Hey, how are you doing? Hey, I saw this is great. And just offering your support as students are struggling through these things and learning through these things, I think offering your support and your confidence in them, I think that's something huge. And also teach them how to be a good alumni, right? If you're wanting to have better alumni relationships, show them what that looks like. And if you don't have that right now, that's not part of your culture, then you can be that catalyst, right? Show them what it means to be a good alumni, what it means to have good alumni relationship, and vice versa, right? It's not just students learning from alumni. Alumni can also learn from students. Like I learned so much from just all the conversations I have with our current our actors right now. And let's say you don't have a great alumni relationship right now, and you want to teach your alums how to serve, what that looks like. Think outside the box and figure out ways. And if you really don't know, you have all these great resources here, with our panelists. You have great resources with the Alumni Association, your local Alumni Association. So there's ways out there. You just have to be creative, and again, really draw from your musical side and your service side and see, all right, what's the best way I can serve as an alum? And again, that's just going to look different. And I think it's really going to be that mind shift. So we are coming up on 9 o'clock Eastern time here. I did want to wrap up with one question. And of course, these are very tough times. We're hearing lots of dark news. We're hearing there's just lots of information out there. And what we would like to leave you with is some pieces of advice that you can take away, that you can reflect on. So my question for our panelists here is, what one piece of advice would you want to go back and share with yourself as you were graduating, getting ready for the real world? What piece of advice would you share with yourself? And we'll start with Rasai.
So one piece of advice, and in looking back and in looking at where we are now, especially with a lot of you graduating, is to just keep your head up, persevere. I think there are really two poems that come to mind that I learned in undergrad that have just stuck with me. One is "See It Through" by Edgar Albert Guest, and of course the other one is "Invictus" by William Ernest Henley. And I think I use "See It Through" most because no matter what's going on, no matter what's happening, you want to see it through. I know it feels kind of difficult to kind of graduate or be transitioning in the midst of this, national emergency, but just know that we're going to get through this. And, many of you were born or coming up in the shadow of 9/11, so we've been through a lot as a country and as individuals, and you've made it this far. Don't give up, and continue to fight through, and you'll come out a winner on the other side. I also just recommend use this time to just prepare for where you want to be, prepare for the vision that you have for your life. And if not, just kind of meditate, take some time for you to process your thoughts and think about where you want to be. And you can have many ideas, write them down and explore all of them. This is your time to continue to think about continuing to just press on and move forward.
Hmm. Yeah, just like we were taught, sometimes we need that rest in life to reflect and to learn to grow. So awesome. Thank you so much. Nick, what's that one piece of advice you would share?
One, I'm going to do a plug for the Alumni Association. I know Bong hates me when I do stuff like this. We had a really exciting meeting last night, so please make sure you kind of subscribe to our social media so you can see all that exciting stuff that's coming out. But one thing I would say, and I didn't really pick this up until after I finished grad school, so that grueling 4.5 years of that, but create a relationship with yourself. Like in college, we're so concerned about creating relationships with others and all those actions. But I definitely noticed a shift in my life for the better when I started to create a relationship with myself, and kind of it's going inwards. It's learning to like myself in all aspects, which I know that sounds deep some days. But I mean, one of the best things I started doing about 4 or 5 years ago is I took myself on like self dates where I went to Borders or Barnes and Nobles and I bought a book and ate a slice of cheesecake. And those helped me grow so much and just kind of discover who I am and where I want to go forward in my life. That I thought that was kind of great. And, in these times, it might be something that's a little easier to do is start to cultivate that relationship with yourself.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, a lot to unpack there as well. Just the fact that like you really do need to take the time. And that's just my personal opinion. So, all right. So our next panelist to answer, Arupa, what is your one piece of advice?
So I would tell myself to take a deep breath, to be kind to yourself, be gentle with the way that things are going. Try not to judge yourself too much on the way that things turn out, and keep an eye out. Like I said, I did not really foresee a future in national leadership in the fraternity, and it worked out. So I would just let myself know to stay aware, and you never know what's coming around the corner.
Yeah. Yeah, which is with everything going on, I think a little bit of that empathy, that forgiveness for yourself and for those around you. If like they don't answer the emails right away, like these are just difficult times. I mean, I've had more cries in the past 2 weeks than I have, I think, in my life. So, okay, great. So our last panelist, Kate, what's that one piece of advice?
Similarly, I would say cut yourself some slack, especially the first year out of school. It's confusing. It's, everyone's path is totally different, especially on the job front, too. Some people get jobs right away. Some people get jobs 6 months later, a year later. Like, your path will be totally different, and it's okay. I always like to point that out because, like, when I was out of school, it took me 6 months to find my first, like, job in my field. And the whole time I was like incredibly anxious, but now like 3 years later, it doesn't even matter. So cut yourself some slack. It will be fine. And you'll create your own journey over your whole life. It will be, you have a lot of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much to each and all of our panelists for sharing your just your experience, your insights, and your suggestions. Of course, we could talk about this all week long. There really is a lot to unpack. The thing is, like take this day by day, take it little bit by, and if you need help with something, obviously you can always reach out. For graduating seniors, our heart goes out to you for everything that you are going through right now. Just know that we're here for you. We're thinking about you, and I think at this time, simplicity and clarity, that's going to be the most powerful thing. So if we can provide that to you, please let us know. For our alums out there who are looking to get more engaged, to get more involved, I think the most important thing is you ask yourself, like, how do you want to get involved? And if you don't know, that's okay. A lot of us don't know either. It sort of just kind of came as we were asking questions and building those relationships. So, we would love to further this conversation one-on-one. We would love to, connect you with others if we don't know the answers, but just know that, we do want people to be connected. And, it may not be the best right now, and I don't think it's ever going to be good enough. And we appreciate your feedback. We appreciate you wanting to stay involved. We hope we're asking for some slack as well, and some grace as we're learning how to really involve this high level of leadership on all fronts, students and our alums as well. We have another VPSA chat on May 2nd for chapter officer transitions. Just wanted to quickly plug that. If you are going through chapter elections and are really unsure how to go about this virtually, please attend. That's May 2nd, and again, it will be recorded. We also have a couple other VPSA chats we're planning. One will be with medical professionals from KKPsi and TBS that will talk through some of the specifics of COVID-19, of how to take care of yourself. Another panel of medical professionals who are going to be talking through, or just professionals in general, how to talk through stress management, anxiety management, and just all the emotions that are kind of being thrown our way right now. We are planning those things, but you will all be receiving a survey tonight just to see how we can improve, what we can do better, and what topics you want to cover. So please be on the lookout for that. It takes 2 minutes, 3 minutes max. And just wanted to say once again, thank you to our panelists. If you have a chance, please reach out to them and share your thanks and gratitude with them as well. All right. Thank you all. Have a great night.